Q Broadcast makes sure your entertainment is always of Q Broadcast. It's taking the world by storm. People are cutting the cord to their high cable bills and moving away from streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and others for something better. Q Broadcast. For just $60 a month, you'll get access to every channel you could ever want, including HBO, Cinemax, and Stars. And the best part, there are no contracts, no hidden fees, and you're free to cancel anytime. With Q Broadcast, you can enjoy streaming live TV, movies, and top series on up to 5 devices at once. Whether you're at home or on the go, Q Broadcast makes sure your entertainment is always at your fingertips. Imagine being able to watch all your favorite channels from anywhere, anytime, without any restrictions. We're talking about thousands of movies, hundreds of TV series, and a huge library of live channels, all in one place. And don't forget video on demand and pay-per-view events. Those are included at no extra cost, so you'll never miss a big event again. Now, take a second and think about your current cable bill. You're probably paying anywhere between $100 and $300 every month, locked into long-term contracts and hit with surprise rate increases. With Q Broadcast, that's a thing of the past. It's just $60 a month. No contracts, no extra fees, no hidden costs, and no price hikes. Why juggle multiple subscriptions like Netflix, Hulu, and cable when Q Broadcast gives you everything you need in one convenient package? People everywhere are switching to Q Broadcast, saving money and getting more content than ever before. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and sign up for Q Broadcast today. Just $60 a month, no contracts, no hidden fees. It's time to take control of your entertainment and start streaming smarter.
We live in a world where men are told it's harmless. It's just entertainment. But let's stop lying to ourselves. Pornography destroys. It weakens your spirit. It dulls your drive. And it robs you of what real intimacy is supposed to be. Every click is a step away from the man you're supposed to be. We can't call ourselves leaders if we are slaves to a screen.
As someone that is prior service, I know all about discipline. And discipline isn't out there, it's within your mind. Porn rewires your brain, weakens your will, wrecks all of your relationships. It doesn't just stay on a screen, it invades your marriage, your confidence, and your actual purpose. As men, if we don't learn to discipline ourselves, we'll be ruled by our impulses. Now, it is time to stand up and take control before this silent war takes more than you're willing to lose.
Real men don't hide in the shadows of shame. We step up and we protect what's ours. We fight for our wives and kids, our own hearts. Twitter isn't just an app, it's a weapon. It's a tool used to break free and start living like the man that you're meant to be. The battle's here and it starts with you. You can stop living in shame and you can break free today.
Of Q Broadcast, it's taking the world by storm. People are cutting the cord to their high cable bills and moving away from streaming services like Netflix, Hulu, and others for something better. Q Broadcast. For just $60 a month, you'll get access to every channel you could ever want, including HBO, Cinemax, and Stars. And the best part, there are no contracts, no hidden fees, and you're free to cancel anytime. With Q Broadcast, you can enjoy streaming live TV, movies, and top series on up to 5 devices at once. Whether you're at home or on the go, Q Broadcast makes sure your entertainment is always at your fingertips. Imagine being able to watch all your favorite channels from anywhere, anytime, without any restrictions. We're talking about thousands of movies, hundreds of TV series, and a huge library of live channels, all in one place. And don't forget video on demand and pay-per-view events. Those are included at no extra cost, so you'll never miss a big event again. Now, take a second and think about your current cable bill. You're probably paying anywhere between $100 and $300 every month, locked into long-term contracts and hit with surprise rate increases. With Q Broadcast, that's a thing of the past. It's just $60 a month. No contracts, no extra fees, no hidden costs, and no price hikes. Why juggle multiple subscriptions like Netflix, Hulu, and cable when Q Broadcast gives you everything you need in one convenient package? People everywhere are switching to Q Broadcast, saving money and getting more content than ever before. So, what are you waiting for? Click the link in the description and sign up for Q Broadcast today. Just $60 a month, no contracts, no hidden fees. It's time to take control of your entertainment and start streaming smarter.
We live in a world where men are told it's harmless. It's just entertainment. But let's stop lying to ourselves. Pornography destroys. It weakens your spirit. It dulls your drive. And it robs you of what real intimacy is supposed to be. Every click is a step away from the man you're supposed to be. We can't call ourselves leaders if we are slaves to a screen.
As someone that is prior service, I know all about discipline. And discipline isn't out there, it's within your mind. Porn rewires your brain, weakens your will, wrecks all of your relationships. It doesn't just stay on a screen, it invades your marriage, your confidence, and your actual purpose. As men, if we don't learn to discipline ourselves, we'll be ruled by our impulses. Now, it is time to stand up and take control before this silent war takes more than you're willing to lose.
Real men don't hide in the shadows of shame. We step up and we protect what's ours. We fight for our wives and kids, our own hearts. Twitter isn't just an app, it's a weapon. It's a tool used to break free and start living like the man that you're meant to be. The battle's here and it starts with you. You can stop living in shame and you can break free today.
Of Q Broad.
Here at the Anomic age, we know that these times of uncertainty are stressful. It is incumbent upon all of us to put our fears first and bow down to government tyranny. Gone are the days of freely leaving your home, working, and social interactions. In exchange for safety, we will trade liberty. At the Anomic age, we understand. However, just in case you want to get off your knees and stop being a sniveling coward, check out the John Age Project at anomicage.com.
Meet Ann Morrissey, who is here with her daughter, Dareth. Dareth is 17 years old. Mrs. Morrissey, I don't have to tell you that most parents would be extremely depressed if their daughter came home one day looking like this. I assume that was your response: shock, anger, depression? What was it?
I was extremely angry. I really went bananas.
Yeah, how old was she when this happened?
Possibly 13, 14 years old.
We're talking like it's a disease, isn't that?
Well,
yeah. How did she explain it to you, Mrs. Morrissey?
there was very poor communication until we went into counseling. And it almost broke up our family. But through counseling and Serena, I can understand it better.
What do you understand?
That she feels like she doesn't want to be like everyone else, and she wants to be her own person. And through the dress code and her lifestyle, she's expressing this. It doesn't conform with our rules, but we're learning to cope, and it's a very, very difficult thing. Extremely difficult.
Dareth, let's let you talk for yourself. You're from Long Beach, California.
I just can't handle being like everybody else because that's what everybody else wants, you know. Just because somebody else does something does not mean that I have to do it. You know, I have my own morals and ideals, and I go by them.
Are you drug-free, Dara?
Yes, I am.
Is this a political statement then? Do you have some misgiving about the society that you see?
Yeah, there's a lot of problems, you know. A lot of the people are really aware of what's going on, you know, and I don't like it, you know. There's a lot of problems.
What?
I don't like the way society is based.
What bothers you? Give us some of the misgivings you have.
The rich, the poor, the people starving, the wars, you know. Why can't, you know, everybody just get along and just live their life?
Allan, Real and Chevy.
Propagating truth in a world of lies. You are listening to the John H. Project.
Trust no one. Trust no one. Trust no one.
You found it. You're here. You're headlong down the runaway train that is the Anomic Age, and I'm your host, John H. Happy to be back with you once again. Hailing proudly from the coastal plains of the Old North State, I'll be your tour guide this evening. We got a great guest coming up for you. We got, none other than, sorry, folks, my cold's still getting me. None other than Mr. Allan Parker. Allan was lead counsel for Norma McCovey, formerly Roe of Roe versus Wade, from 2000 to 2012, and Sandra Cano, the Doe of Doe versus Bolton, until 2014 in their legal efforts to overturn the two landmark cases that brought legalized abortion on demand to America. Allan Parker is the president of the Justice Foundation. He is the former professor of law at St. Mary's University in San Antonio, Texas, where he taught education, law, and civil procedure. He was a visiting professor at the University of Texas and studied international human rights at the International Human Rights Institute in Strasbourg, France. He taught international human rights at the St. Mary's Institute of World Legal Problems in Lindsberg, Austria as well. And I would definitely recommend going to thejusticefoundation.org. His full CV is right there. You're going to see that on your screen right now. That's thejusticefoundation.com. And before I forget, please check out anomicage.com if you've not already done so. Please like all the likes, subscribe to all the subscriptions. PayPal.me/anomicage, Patreon.com/anomicage as well. All right, without further ado, let's bring our guest into the program. Thank you so much, Allan, for being with us. Thank you so much for the time. I can't say that enough. I know everybody's busy out there, summer kind of beginning and everything.
John, it's a great honor to be on the program with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, man. I mean, I kind of gave you the preface on this before we got started, but this is a topic I've always wanted to really delve into on this show. I mean, I've covered it on sort of solo editions of the show here and there, but never really had somebody with your breadth of knowledge on this that can really delve into this topic. And I think it's something we all need to really get more informed about. You know, as I kind of look at this topic, I almost view it as like American mythology, because everybody thinks they know, but they just don't really know the true background, the true story, how this whole thing, you know, this murder of children became this legalized blood sacrifice that we had to endure and are still enduring for, you know, decades upon decades now. Nobody really knows. They just think they know. So I'm so happy to have you on there. And if you could just sort of, I guess, begin at the beginning with this whole thing. sort of demystify us a little bit as to what we think we know versus what really went down with this very important story?
Well, I got involved in it starting in the year 2000 when we were asked to represent Norma McCorvey, who was the Roe of Roe v. Wade, and Sandra Cano, the Doe of Doe v. Bolton. And these were the two cases that brought abortion on demand to America in 1973. Before that time, abortion had been a crime in America. It was called child murder or homicide for about 200 years, from the 1770s to 1970s. That's 200 years, because the common law in America and the Judeo-Christian view of the law that we were under for 200 years said what the Declaration of Independence says about life. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are what? Created equal and endowed by who? Their creator, with certain inalienable rights. And that among these rights is the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, what right? The right to life, governments are instituted among men, meaning the purpose of government is to protect your right to life. That was in the Declaration of Independence, a self-evident truth. And then the last sentence says, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. All right, so we're going to be talking about that phrase, that section of the Declaration of Independence, and for, again, about 200 years, the judges followed the Declaration of Independence, and they followed the two life clauses that are in the Constitution. Until 1973, we knew that both the federal and state governments had a duty to protect life. And here's where it is in writing in the Constitution. Everyone who listens to this program today will know where the life clauses in the Constitution are. And the first one is the Fifth Amendment, which says no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, and property without due process of law. And that binds the federal government, and that was passed as part of the Bill of Rights in 1791. So the Bill of Rights was so critical, our Constitution may not have passed without the Bill of Rights, because people were concerned the government wasn't protective enough of people's rights, including the right to life. So then the Fifth Amendment says no person shall be deprived of life without due process of law. And then the second life clause is, nor shall any state deprive any person of life without due process of law, nor deny them the equal protection of the laws. So there's actually two clauses in the 14th Amendment that protect life. But today I want to just focus on the life clauses, because that Fifth and the 14th Amendment, they were called the due process clauses. Most people know them as that today. And there is due process mentioned in them, but there's also life. And I mentioned that for about 100 years, from the 1920s to 2020, the court did not care what the words of the Constitution meant. They said, we are the arbiters of the Constitution, and the Constitution means what we think it should mean. Now, what kind of a government does that create? An oligarchy. What is an oligarchy? Government by a few, a committee of some kind. The Committee of Nine from 1920 to 2020. And why do I pick the date 2020? Because that's when Amy Coney Barrett was nominated and confirmed to the Supreme Court of the United States. And she became the sixth member of the court who believed in originalism. And what is originalism? It's a just powers concept, because originalist judges say our duty is to interpret the Constitution and statutes according to the public meaning of the words as they were understood by the people who adopted them. In other words, our job is to follow the people's meaning, not the meaning we make up because we think that's best for the people. No, we're not an oligarchy. Now, 6 judges, to one degree or another on the court, believe that it's their constitutional duty to apply the original meaning of the word. And that's why, for example, they're applying the Second Amendment, which was designed for a well-regulated militia. You might say, who wants a well-regulated militia today? Well, a lot of people do, but the judges are doing it not because they want the right to bear arms, but because that's what the people put in the Second Amendment. And this right to life is also in the Constitution. So it's a very new day because for 100 years, 2 major things occurred. First, I've already mentioned, the courts just said, we are the ones who determine what the Constitution means. That's why in 1973, they could make up a right to abortion out of the word liberty. Now, liberty didn't mean you could kill your children in the past. Liberty meant you had the right to do good things that were right. You had the right to have a family. You had the right to get married. You had the right to own property and that kind of thing. But the second thing that happened from the 1920s on was led by Oliver Wendell Holmes, a Harvard law professor who then became a member of the Supreme Court. He said, there is no brooding omnipresence in the sky. What does that mean? That's Harvardese for there's no God.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the Declaration of Independence clearly said there is a God, and that's where our rights come from. This is a huge battle for what kind of a government that believes its duty is to follow the words of the people. That's a constitutional republic. That's more of a democracy, even though strictly we have a representational constitutional republic because the people's representatives make the law, but the people get to choose the representatives every 2 years or 6 years or however many it's set. So, and then the judges, while they've been given tenure upon good behavior, as long as they follow the Constitution, then they can stay in office. So they have some independence, but not from the people or the people's words. So that's why today, for the first time since the 1920s, it matters what the words in the Constitution actually mean. And there's 2 life clauses. So the question today is, did the right to life in the Constitution apply to protect life before birth or just after birth? The abortion industry tries to claim you're not alive, you're not a human until you're born. But that's until 1973, that was never the law. And even in 1973, the court just purported to say, at this state in the development of man's knowledge, the judiciary can't know when life begins, which was a lie then. And as early as the 14th Amendment, microscopes could show the sperm and the egg coming together, and they knew life began at fertilization. The earlier founders, they knew that life began in the womb. They might not have been able to see the sperm and the egg coming together. So we've talked a little bit about the Declaration, but what did the founders mean? And the founders tell you right there in there, if it came from the Creator, when would your rights come? When you're created by the Creator. And the Bible makes it very, very clear that you're created by God. It says things like, I knit your bones together in your mother's womb. And before X-rays, they knew the bones were being formed. They didn't just magically appear when the baby came out. Those things take time, and life is being formed.
That's true.
So here's one of the founders' quotes. His name is James Wilson. He was a signer of the Declaration. He was a signer of the Constitution, and he was a Washington appointee to the Supreme Court. So he would know what the Declaration of Independence says. We hold these truths to be self-evident, meaning everybody believes this, that men are created equal and endowed by their creator with certain inalienable rights, including the right to life. So what he said then, with consistency, beautiful and undeviating, human life from its commencement, which means beginning, to its close, is protected by the common law. Now, the common law was the law everywhere in America. All the colonies followed the common law. And that was things that like made it a murder, even if you didn't live in a place that had passed a statute making it a murder, a crime to murder. It was a crime to murder somebody because it was based on the law of God. You might be on the frontier and commit a murder. You couldn't say, well, I'm on the frontier. Nobody's passed a law out here. No, you would be held liable for murder and you'd be put to death for murder because of the common law. He went on to say, in the contemplation of law, life begins when the infant is first able to stir in the womb. So there's two evidences. What did he call the child in the womb? An infant, which is a term of humanity. He didn't call it an embryo or fetus or developing life. Yeah. It was able to stir in the womb. And stirring is even before quickening. When the woman can feel it. By law, life is protected not only from immediate destruction, but from every degree of danger and actual violence, and in some cases, from every degree of danger. So that's one who was a signer of the Declaration, signer of the Constitution. So he knows what the 5th and 14th Amendments, well, not the 14th, he didn't live in that time period. He knew what the founders meant, the Declaration and the 5th Amendment. Then he did law lectures, and he was even his law skills were so good that George Washington appointed to the first Supreme Court.
Wow.
Now, there's another famous founder who had something to say about it also. His name was John Witherspoon, and he was one of the founders of the College of New Jersey, which later became the Princeton University. And he signed the graduation diploma for 13 American presidents because they went through to his school. He's known as the professor of the founding era, and he taught a lot of the founders. So he said, in America, we have denied the power of life and death to parents. Now, why would he say that? Because under the pagan and Greek cultures, parents could kill their children. They could give an abortion-producing drug to their wife and poison the baby in the womb. So these abortion drugs have been around a long time. But it was a crime from 1873 in America on, when the 14th was passed, to send abortion-producing drugs through the mail or interstate commerce. Why did they choose those two things? Because that's what Congress is given the power to control under the Constitution. They weren't supposed to police everything in the states. The states could also make it a crime to commit murder. But the Postal Service is a function of the U.S. government. And so they had to immediately say, no abortion-producing drugs or devices, things you might insert inside the mother to pull the baby out and things like that. Nor in interstate commerce, like common carriers from state to state, like abortion pill distribution is today. So why did he say that? He said, we've denied the power of life and death to parents. And the Greek and Roman parents could also put the child on the hill and after birth and let the wolves or the weather kill the baby. So he says, we don't do that in America. Why? We protect the child in the womb and at birth and from on birth. And yet legal abortion gives the power of life or death over the parents. I mean, over the children, doesn't it? That's what abortion does. Okay, it's my child. I can kill it. He says that's not in the Constitution. And then the last founder I'll quote is James Kent. He wrote his journals, commentaries on the law in 1820. So that was after the Fifth Amendment, about 30 years afterwards. But he showed you this was the law because of the Fifth Amendment. It also kind of shows you the law, what was life and how did the law treat life in the 1820s. The 14th Amendment was passed after the Civil War, 1868, to give protection to all human life. Now, it's true that the group that was mostly being denied their life and liberty and property at that time was African Americans. And so the 14th Amendment was designed to give them human rights. Because why? What is a crime against humanity? It's when the government withdraws legal protection from an entire class of human beings. You and your audience can think of examples of that in Houston. But one of them in America was slavery. And it was the Supreme Court who said African Americans are an inferior race. And when I say that, I'm just quoting the Dred Scott decision of the U.S. Supreme Court. I believe we're all equal in the eyes of God. There's only one human race. You can have different ethnicities, but there's one blood, one human race. And the last thing I'll read, this James Kent quote: whenever such consideration would be for his benefit, a child en ventre sa mère in the mother's womb is considered as absolutely born. Now, that just means even if the child isn't born yet, a guardian is given for the child. And the common example that happened a lot back then, it wasn't abortion because abortion was a crime. It didn't occur. It did occur some, just like murder is a crime today, but it still occurs. You can't say people did something. Well, you can't with any rationality say people do something, so let's make it legal. No, something's wrong. It should stay wrong, like murder. But there are people who want to decriminalize things like sex with children now. That's wrong. It's horrible. Children cannot consent. They must be protected by law and by morality. But a common situation, a man might die, and so let's say he had 4 live children and his wife was pregnant with the 5th one, but the baby hadn't been born yet, but he dies. Well, a will is effective on death. So that some might argue that child wasn't alive, so he doesn't get any rights, but the law was clear. No, if he's alive in the mother's womb, then he gets his share of the inheritance, and we appoint a guardian to protect him. So that's why for 200 years, until 1973, when Dobbs illegitimately created a right to abortion, abortion was a crime. And now we're in the process. I might let you ask some questions about that. That's phase 1. It's like abolishing slavery. First, they had to abolish the slave trade. Then they abolished slavery. Even in the Constitution of the U.S., the slave trade was abolished in the written Constitution in 1806 or 1820. I can't remember right now. But they put in there that eventually it will be illegal to import slaves into America. So they wanted to abolish slavery, but then they had imported so many slaves that just the natural production of African Americans produced more slaves. But this is where we are. So there's no right to abortion in the Constitution. Is there a right to life in the Constitution? That's the phase we're in right now. And it's not a matter for the states. It's a matter that the Constitution will someday protect. I will say this right now, there's a battle going on in both state and federal government, whether to protect life or not. But that's only because the Supreme Court has not decided yet if there's a right to life in the Constitution.
That's true. And I'm a sucker for older movies of like the 60s and 70s, 80s as well. But I can't help. I was watching stuff recently. I couldn't help but notice just the complete dichotomy of where we were juxtaposed to where we are now. because I can't even recall the show I was watching, but something along the lines of abortion came up, and it was spoke with hushed tones. It was spoke like, that's illegal. Don't do, you don't do anything to your baby, blah, blah, blah. And you juxtapose that to now, where now it's just anything goes. It's normalized. I don't want to get us too far afield from the topic here, but I mean, anything goes, meaning like you mentioned, like, oh, sure, you can do whatever with whoever, basically. If you want to have sex with a guy, girl, and even pushing the pedophile agenda with organizations like NAMBLA. And I guess this is like a larger topic, but I think it's really apropos for what we're talking about, because they've normalized all this stuff over, I don't even know, like two, 3 generations here. To we went from hushed tones, that's murder, to do whatever you want, do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law, according to Aleister Crowley. And that's kind of the tone that America has taken, for, I would say, for worse, 100% for the worst. But to kind of get back to what you're saying, I think they've done it by deifying some of these people of the past. And I like your work because it really exposes, look, these ladies kind of recanted all that. They weren't really pro-abortion. They didn't want to murder their children. So you look at Norma McCovey and Sandra Cano, both of them, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, kind of years later went, hey, we didn't want to be the demigod for murdering babies. We didn't want any of this, but they've gotten framed, especially in the cult of academia and the courts of public opinion, as these icons of women's health and women's liberty. And, nothing could be further from the truth.
Yes, you're absolutely right. And there's a lot of good material that we've talked about already, and more that we're going to talk about on this program that's on our website. Most of it is for free. I have written a book called Reversing Roe v. Wade, My Journey with Roe, Doe, and God. And it's right there on the side of my head. There's a kind of a copy of it up there.
I'm putting that on the screen for everybody right now. This is thejusticefoundation.org, and you're looking at the Roe versus Wade, Reversing Roe versus Wade. That's on your screen right now, folks, if you're watching this.
Yeah, if you want to buy a copy of that, it's $16.99 usually, but sometimes even cheaper than that. If you like a hard copy, if you want a free copy of it, also on our website, maybe you can pull this up, is the Life in the Constitution Project. It's one of the 3 things we do. We have a center against forced abortion, because once you make abortion legal, it allows other people to force women to have an abortion to solve their problem. For example, the 3 most common types of forced abortions are adult parents or minors forcing a minor to have an abortion against her will. And then the second is the adult male forcing a woman to abort his child because he doesn't want to be a father of a live child. He's the father of a child, but he doesn't want a live baby. And then the third is human trafficking and prostitution.
Mm-hmm.
All of those are illegal. Involuntary abortion is illegal in America, even states like California and New York that allow voluntary abortion. And so the book, but there's also a slideshow called, you can find it, look at.
Yeah, I'm looking at it. I'll pull it up as you're talking.
Research, I think is the name of that slide. Research. You can sign this Declaration of Life in the Constitution. And when we file briefs in the Supreme Court, we will add your name to our briefs as a supporter of the life in the Constitution. And there's a research file there that documents the things that I've been saying. It's a presentation that anyone can present to their friends or families or churches. You can become a life ambassador and present this to other people. There's some, that slideshow has some, at the very end of it, it has a free digital copy. So if you do your research and go all the way through the slides, there's only about a dozen slides or so. It's not long, but at the last page, you could there's a QR code that'll send you a free PDF of the book. So you could get a free digital copy of the book just for educating yourself. And I believe enjoying it. It's really powerful slideshow. We've talked about it today. So, but to go back to Norma and Sandra, in the year 2000, they both called me. And Sandra Kano was the Doe v. Bolton case, which created the health exception. And under Georgia law, they'd already had therapeutic abortion. Most everywhere, including Georgia, abortion was a crime. It was usually called child murder. And they didn't call a pregnant woman, they say a woman with child. That was the language of our founders. It's the language of the King James Bible. It's what people used to say up until they started trying to dehumanize the child. If the abortionist told the woman, yes, we're going to terminate the life of your child, most women would not do that. They have to be lied to. In fact, we were involved in some litigation, and the state of South Dakota required the abortionist to tell women that abortion is the termination of the life of a separate, living, unique human being. That's what abortion really is.
That's right.
And Planned Parenthood said, no, that's a philosophical or metaphysical statement. They said it's false, misleading. You can't tell us to do that. And the Eighth Circuit Court of Appeals, a federal court of appeals in St. Louis, sitting in St. Louis, Missouri, said, no, that's not a metaphysical statement. That's a factual statement. And it's not false or misleading, and it's relevant to a woman's decision as to whether or not to abort her child. But the abortionists were so afraid that the Supreme Court would agree with that court that they did not appeal that. So it's the only federal court decision I know of in America that says it is the termination of the life of a separate, living, unique human being. And we've urged the Trump administration to put that, and all states, to put that into informed consent laws. There's three things a woman should know if she's in one of the states that make abortion legal. And that is that no one can force her to have an abortion, and people will try to do it. Number two, abortion is the termination of the life of a separate, living, unique human being. And third, every state has a safe haven law. No woman in America has to kill a child to be free of the burden of parenting. And this is called the safe haven law. And it was brought up by Amy Coney Barrett in the Dobbs v. Jackson's women health case, which reversed Roe v. Wade. And it's footnote 45 in the Dobbs case. But here's what everybody needs to know. It's one of our reasons, even people who say they're for choice or it should be the woman's choice, I think could be persuaded, because a woman can have the freedom of Roe to not parent a child without killing the baby and hurting herself. Under the safe haven law, she can walk out of the hospital and leave the baby behind, or have up to 3, 30, 60, or 90 days, depending on the state, to return the baby to a hospital or fire station. No questions asked, no legal procedure, no abortion-related trauma, and it's free. So in exchange for some months of pregnancy, which is serious, we take all obligation and expense of 18 years of parenting away from the child. And the first one of those was passed in Texas under George Bush, and it was called the Baby Moses Law. Why? Because they were trying to kill the Jewish male children in Egypt. And his mother saved her by putting her in a basket in the Nile. And he was raised by a prince. So what we're saying is, don't kill the baby. It is a human being. We've known that from 250 years ago. And science proves it today. One of the things that's on my slide is, what does the scientific consensus show? There's a beautiful little research paper that I quote, turn it into one slide. Most people think, who are the experts on life? Oh, biologists. They study life, all forms of life, plant, animal, human. And then when do biologists think life begins? They surveyed 5,000 biologists at over 1,000 universities around the world. When does life begin? 96% of them said at fertilization, when the sperm and the egg come together, the DNA combines, you have a unique human being, a member of the species Homo sapiens. You don't have to know whether there's a soul or what. We've always just held that Homo sapiens are worthy of legal protection. Any just society is going to protect all humans in the society, from the most vulnerable at the beginning of birth to the vulnerable people when you get in the end of life. And that's what we do. So the other thing that's so anyway, back in 2000, we began to represent it. And Sandra called me and said, Mr. Parker, that case has been a doom on my shoulder ever since I got involved. And she said, I didn't even want an abortion. I fled to Oklahoma to avoid having an abortion because they told me they packed my suitcases. And apparently 3 doctors had agreed without even seeing Sandra, maybe on some records or some affidavit presented to him that was false. She said, I never wanted an abortion. I fled to Oklahoma. And on the following Monday, we met Norma. And she did want an abortion, but she never had an abortion. And so for 22 years, she was pro-abortion until the 90s, when she began to work in abortion clinics. And on our website, or in my book, which you can get, Reversing Roe v. Wade by Allan Parker, if you just want to Google it, her sworn affidavit that we presented to the Supreme Court says it was working in the abortion clinics that changed her mind. And if you're a pro-life person, you can use that testimony and say, the reality of abortion changed Norma. And one reason we've now collected over 4,800 legally admissible testimonies of women hurt by abortion. Once you hear the reality of what killing your own child does, what feeling like a murderer does, and much of the anger on the other side is denial. Don't tell me it's wrong. I killed my children. I killed 3 of them. I'm not happy about it. But they kind of say that with an angry tone a lot because the conscience is there inside humans. Thank God we have a conscience, or we'd all be the law of the jungle. Mm-hmm. And so we began to collect the testimonies of women hurt by abortion, and we had our first major victory. The book is called Reversing Roe v. Wade, My Journey with Roe, Doe, and God, because God did miracles along the way. When the Lord told me I started thinking, should I represent Norma and Sandra and try to overturn Roe v. Wade? I told God, nobody can break through the stronghold of abortion. It's the biggest brick wall in the law. I said, Lord, the smarter lawyers than me have been involved. How are we going to do this? What are we supposed to do? If we do it, will we win? And I basically said, no one can break through. So that day when Sandra called me and said, it's a doom on my shoulder, that night my wife brought home a book from the homeschool law library and said, I think this book's for you, called The Bed's Too Short and Other Spiritual Essays. And the book said, if you get this message, you're either going to grow and expand your ministry or you'll be too cramped. And this would have been a big change for the Justice Foundation to a big national project. So the next morning, I said, well, that sounds right. I guess maybe you're telling me do it, Lord. But then this is what Isaiah 28:14-22 says. This is the scripture that has sustained me. Thus says behold, thus says the Lord to the mocking judges who rule my people in Jerusalem. So God is talking to mocking judges. The rest of what I'm saying is a quote, what God said to them. Behold, you've made a covenant with death. You've made an agreement with the grave. You don't think the overwhelming scourge will reach you because you've covered yourself with fraud and deception. Wow. That's what Roe and Doe were, a covenant with death and fraud, deception on the court that Doe wanted an abortion even. So then God goes on to say, behold, I'm laying a stone in Zion, a tested stone, a sure foundation, a cornerstone. He who believes in it or him will not be disturbed or in a hurry. And that's Jesus, we know, the cornerstone. Then he said, I will make justice the measuring line, which was the word in my motion we were going to rely on, and the word in Rule 60. I'll make justice the measuring line, righteousness the plumb line. Hail will sweep away the refuge of lies. Waters will overflow the secret place, and your covenant with death will be annulled. The agreement with the grave will not stand. And that's, and when he said, I'll rise up in Mount Perazim, my Bible had a little verse. What does Baal Perazim mean? The Lord, the master of breakthroughs. So I said, okay, Lord, if you're the master of breakthroughs and you're telling me the covenant with death's going to be, I will do it. Because that was the end of his quote. And then the next quote from Isaiah says, now don't you carry on as a scoffer or your chains will be made stronger. So I said, okay, Lord, I'm going to trust you. And we've seen miracle after miracle. The election of George Bush, the hanging Chads, the fact that he withdrew Harriet Myers as his first nominee, and Alito was nominated and went through the hearing from hell. His wife left in tears. And the other side, if this man is nominated, Roe v. Wade will be overturned if he's confirmed. And it didn't happen then, but he was the one that wrote the opinion down the road that reversed Roe. Think of the election of Donald Trump, that a man who'd never held an office before, a playboy from New York, would become the most pro-life president in American history, that he would get 3 appointments, that Gorsuch would go through the nuclear option to get him on the court, that Scalia would die in the year of the election. Scalia might be considered one of our conservatives, but he had come to believe that Roe v. Wade would never be reversed. And yet his death galvanized the attention of the nation on the Supreme Court. And Mitch McConnell grew a spine of steel and held that seat open from, basically he died in February 13th to November election, almost an entire year, against intense pressure. And Donald Trump then got 3 in a single first term. So that's why we have 6 judges on the Supreme Court who believe in originalism. They haven't made any promises to people, but except to follow the Constitution. And as we just went through, as the slideshow that anybody can get from our thing can show you, the Constitution says life begins in the womb. And here's one more quote I want to quote. It's in the slideshow. It's called Gonzalez v. Carhart. So we started in 2000. And in 2000, the Supreme Court said they struck down 38 state laws banning partial birth abortion, where you pull 3/4 of the baby out, leave the head in the womb, crush the skull, and suck out the brains. That was called partial birth abortion. That's particularly gruesome and abortion. Most people in America think that should be horribly outlawed just by polling data. That's gruesome.
That's
when it's just a little tiny embryo, more people say, well, maybe it's okay to kill it then. That's not right either. It's human from the beginning. But they struck down. In 2007, they upheld the federal ban on partial birth abortion. George Bush got elected. They passed a federal ban on partial birth abortion. And by that time, Justice O'Connor had been removed from the court, but voluntarily resigned. She wasn't on the court. She wasn't removed. She resigned. Yeah. And in that case, the court upheld the federal ban on partial birth abortion and said this: some women come to regret their choice to abort the infant life they once created and sustained. See brief of Kano et al., that means and others, that was 180 women hurt by abortion, it's amicus curiae, page 22 to 24.
Mm-hmm.
Severe depression and loss of esteem can follow. So they said what it was at the moment of abortion was an infant life. Before that's the first time they'd ever said anything like that. They'd always call it embryo or potential life or future life before then. But now they admitted that it's an infant life. And does the Constitution protect infant life from inside the womb? Yes, as we've already seen the documentary quotes from the founders. Yes,
I think the language is so important, because I often look at this notion of weaponization of language on this show, and I think that's exactly what's happened. Where, just like you said, for hundreds of years, everyone recognized a life. Everyone used terminology that would reflect this is a living human. And then basically it was a slow decay from, I'd say, at least the 1960s on, from where we started slowly weaponizing the language. We'll massage it a little bit. Well, it's a life, but is it a life at conception? Is it a life at birth? The waters got very muddied into where we are today, where you'll hear often people say, oh, it's just a clump of cells. It's not, it's not a big deal. And this is primarily go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yes, that's the way atrocities always start. The Germans called the Jews subhuman, or Untermenschen, subhuman. And we call the Indians savages. They're not really people, they're savages. Right. And we in America called the slaves an inferior race. We meaning a white majority in Dred Scott. You and I weren't around to say that. And but that is how you commit atrocities. Dehumanize people first. You're absolutely right, John.
And they've done that with the images as well, because not to draw parallels, but a lot of people, they don't want to know how the sausage is made. How do you make the donuts? Nobody really wants to know. And it's the same thing when you look at abortion. People want to sort of look at it as an out of sight, out of mind. It's not a big deal. There's no gore. There's none of this brutality, like I know you've discussed a little bit of, but I think a lot of people are missing these elements. And I think if they really knew what went on at these abortuaries, and even what goes on if you just take the abortion pill. I see these stupid commercials sometimes on TV, and they make it like, oh, it's just a walk in the park and there's birds singing, and hey, you just take this abortion pill and it's okay. No big deal. No consequences, no repercussions for your actions.
Yes, since you mentioned the abortion pill, I want to particularly say it's worse than a surgical abortion to women for two reasons. In surgical abortion, it's like a doctor's doing it. It's easier to maintain the facade that it's okay. A doctor's doing it. It wouldn't be right. Many of the women say, I never would have done it if it was illegal, and a doctor told me it was okay, and it wasn't a human. So they still feel guilty when they killed their child, and you could say they have a duty. They don't try to get out of their responsibility for it morally, but it is making it hard. So then under the pill, you are given the pills and you administer your health. And here's the deceptive language they use. Oh, in the comfort of your home or other safe place. But that's deceptive, because what happens is when the baby comes out, the mother sees the baby. Most of the babies will look because they're bleeding. Every woman will bleed, because the first pill kills the baby, detaches the placenta, and then it's got to be expelled or the woman will die from sepsis, from living matter decaying inside her womb. So the women look down and they say, oh, the first women that ever called us was sobbing historically, saying, they lied to me. They lied to me. They told me this wasn't a baby. This is a baby. I can see the hands and the legs. This is a baby. And the legal question she had for us, can I bury my baby in the backyard? That's the reality of what women see. Sometimes in their toilet, they just look down. Some of them will scoop it out of the toilet. They want to see it. Some put it on in the refrigerator so they can bury the baby. It's traumatizing. They see the eyes, as some of our testimony in the FDA abortion case. So every woman will experience some of that. The baby's going to come out in their home. Women talk about being traumatized. They have to leave because every time they go to the bathroom in their own home, they're traumatized again by the event. It's like PTSD because it's just horrifying. So even Britney Spears in her book describes the abortion pill experience with Justin Timberlake singing to her. Timberlake, I think. Justin Bieber, maybe it was one of those guys. I don't read People magazine much, so, but it's in her book. I don't always mention it, but she says this was horrible. This was wrong. Nobody should go through this. So she's an anti-abortion pill advocate. I don't know her position on abortion. But there's no let me summarize our 5 arguments why abortion should be not legal anywhere, and it'll solve the problem. Number 1, abortion is a crime against humanity. You are killing human beings. That should be enough. But 2, you're hurting the people you're trying to help. The women themselves are deeply injured. 3, safe haven is available to every woman at no cost, no abortion-related trauma, and free. So use that. And then what will happen to the children? That we will give them to the 1 to 2 million families every year waiting to adopt newborn children, because about 10% of American women are infertile, unable to have a child, deliver a live child to birth after a year of trying. That's 6 million women every year on a rolling cohort basis. And about after they try something, they wait, maybe it goes away. But about every year, there's 1 to 2 million who tried everything and said, I can handle the baby. I want a baby. So we would just say, don't kill the baby. Don't hurt yourself. Give us the baby. We'll give them to the 1 to 2 million families waiting to adopt children. And it ends the abortion wars. It's a win-win for everybody. And except to save the life of the mother, there should be no exceptions to abortion, because both lives are worthy of protection under the Constitution. The mothers and the babies are equally protected. So all those lives making abortion, except when necessary to save the life of the mother. It has to be necessary to actually save the life of the mother. And then the mother gets the choice. Some women say, but today no one really dies from it. You can save both usually, but that's where we're going to go. Stop the abortion killing, give the children to the families waiting to adopt it, and we can end the abortion wars. And it'll be as unthinkable as slavery is today. Nobody thinks of slavery exceptions like for old people who need an assistant and can't afford it. Let's give them a slave. No, it's just crazy talk. It'll be that way someday about life in the womb.
I certainly hope so. I want to end this on hopefully a positive note, but I'll kind of frame my question like this. When I graduated high school, like mid-90s, and this might be a far reach for a lot of people, but I think a lot of this, and not to short-sighted, but it's kind of just marketing, because I remember being much, much younger and just thinking, it's no big deal. It's, and you looked at conservatism as, I don't know, I'm disconnected completely. It's these old white guys, that's the old stereotype. And marketing wise, there's always the young hip celebrity or star that's saying it's no big deal. Vote Democrat, pro-abortion, do what you want, the whole of the law, all this kind of mess. And I always look at it like K through 12 indoctrination, college, university weaponization, because I think so much of what we get, those cues come from the peer networks, the social groups, which also infuses and substantiates the norms of the culture. I don't want to get off on that jag too much, but bright side of the force here, are we seeing things turn around? I mean, I've heard conjecture of, there's this roaring new generation of people that are more conservative, people that are following the Lord. What's your read on that? I know you're kind of more boots on the ground than I am, especially in this topic. So, are we seeing things turn around? God, I hope so. But what's your take on it?
Yes, there's a lot more younger people on our side getting the message out. Even the assassination of Charlie Kirk has created great good. Those campus groups are growing up at both the high school and the college level. The word is getting out. My basic reliability is that the rule of law can be reestablished and that the Supreme Court will find it. That's their duty to do it. But we do need prayer. I want to just kind of conclude with a call for prayer. And in the PowerPoint presentation that we've been talking about today on the Right to Life, there are prayer points. We need to pray that the Supreme Court will recognize the right to life in the Constitution, that they'll apply it in a particular case, and that they'll have the courage to remember that this is the way it was. This is the 250th anniversary of the Declaration of Independence. And the liberal judges took it out of the Constitution and out of the law for 100 years, from the 20s to 2020, 1920 to 2020. So we now have judges who know the truth and feel a constitutional duty, but they still need protection and moral support and prayer. So I'm very confident. People ask me, do you think Roe v. Wade could ever be reversed? We're coming up to just the 4th anniversary of the reversal of Roe v. Wade. It was a law for 49 years. And I said, yes. I said, partly because of the biblical way the Lord got me into it, that he said he was going to end the covenant with death. Well, having half the country radical for abortion and the other half that's pro-life unable to defend themselves from the abortion pills coming in, we still have a covenant with death in America. And I believe God's going to end that. And I said, I believe it because of the word that God gave me, but also because millions of people are praying for the end of abortion. And now we need millions of people praying to find the right to life in the Constitution. The Supreme Court didn't address that issue. Mississippi didn't try to get him to say that. It was not before the court. So when they said the matters return to the states and political process, that was true, because that's all they were doing, saying there's no right to abortion. Until they say there's a right to life in the Constitution, then the states are more free to do what they want to do. But no one has asked them yet. We need a case to get there. We need people praying. And I believe the Lord is going to end the covenant with death. So in my book, I give all the credit to God. There's miracles we didn't even talk about, like the death of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. When Dobbs got there, she was alive. And we never pray for the death of any human. We pray for the salvation of every human, including all the abortionists in America. We pray for Planned Parenthood all the time, because God doesn't want anyone to perish. And if someone's stayed through and they've had abortion, it's not the unforgivable sin. Our website has Operation Outcry on it also. Men and women can give us their testimonies so the courts and legislatures can know that abortion hurts, and it's not the easy, cost-free solution. And there's also abortion recovery resources there. You can go through healing with other people, just for women particularly, sharing it with other people, talking through it, and receiving the forgiveness of God and hearing what God says about his son dying on the cross for all sin. That can be very, very freeing and healing. And we've got an army of healed, wounded warrior women and men in this country now who are starting to speak out.
So true. Well, Allan, thank you so much for your time today. If you'll stick around for maybe like 45 seconds, I'll say goodbye to you at the end here off the air.
All right.
And I'm going to put on the screen for everybody once again, and feel free to underscore this, but it's on the screen right now. TheJusticeFoundation.org. That's where you can find all these materials that Allan got into today. Also, there's a link for his book there as well. So I can't recommend that enough for anybody that's out there, thinking about this, gone through this, whatever the case may be. I think there's a lot of really good resources there. Any final words, Allan, on that?
Thank you, John, and thank you all for helping us. And just a reminder that we do all of our work for free. We're a 501c3 charitable organization. If people would like to make a donation to support the work, they can do that on the website as well.
All right. And that's TheJusticeFoundation.org. All right. I'll close up and talk to you in a second there. Thank you so much, Allan. All right. Well, folks, thank you so much as well for tuning in. Hope you got a lot out of this. This was definitely a very, I'd say, deep into the pool episode, as it should be. And can't underscore that enough. The justicefoundation.org, a lot of really great resources there. Anybody that's present, past, or future looking into this topic. As I always say, you can't do everything, but you can do something. Please try to get out there, do your part, make a difference, and I'll be seeing you sooner than later in the Anomic Age.
Thank you for listening to The Anomic Age, a John Age project. For past shows, further info, and to comment, go to anomicage.com. That's ANOMICAGE.com. Till next time, thank you for listening to The Anomic Age.